Ayompa, you know, I love Puzzle Bobble, but are the games actually good? Or is it just my nostalgia-filled imagination? Let's find out. We're only going to be talking about the arcade and SNES version, so no 3DO version and no PC version. Bobble Bobble is an arcade game created by Fukio Mitsuji in 1986, who aimed the game at dating couples, hence the cute characters, starring Bob and Bob, who have been turned into bobble dragons by the evil Drunk. No, seriously, that's his actual name, look it up. And so it's up to the dragons to save their girlfriends and become human again. The game was very popular, spawning sequels, merchandise, and what we're going to be talking about, puzzle spin-off. For some reason in Puzzle Bobble, the humans are guns and they pretend that the dragons have always been dragons. Weird. So in this first installment, the objective is to clear out the bubbles before you shoot too many, or if you take too long, the screen will push the bubbles down after each shot until the bubbles cross the line. You have 3 lives, you lose all of them and it's game over. There's also this drop mechanic where if you make the bubbles above disappear while there was a few below, it drops. It's required to use as they can do chain reactions and are very helpful. The graphics look even better than Bubble Bubble. It actually looks like an arcade game instead of a NES one. With that said, is there anything encouraging you to play the game other than addicting gameplay? It doesn't have a story for one, which is strange considering Bubble Bobble had one. For two, unlike its arcade sequels, this one is the slower out of the 4. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, like Dr. Mario. It's a slow puzzle game, but it's still enjoyable. However, with this game, the difficulty gets more and more unfair as the game goes on. And wanna know how long the game is? It has 32 levels. 32 levels? That's too much levels! But the music is catchy. Too bad it only has like 2 music in game. The ending of the game is so disappointing that I'm just gonna show you. Wow, that was great and definitely worth it. The only other mode we have is versus mode. And it's so much fun. Using the drop mechanic to screw up each other, seeing your friends rage, and then say it doesn't make any sense. Wait, that part might just be me. More fun and chaos here than in the frustrating single-player mode. If you're not playing this for the multiplayer, don't play this game. It's not even the greatest game to start with as a beginner / newcomer. But what about the SNES version? There are more game modes here than the arcade version. There's single player, which is basically just the arcade game, but with different themes and 100 levels! So I played all of them. And it's as good as the arcade game. There's the versus mode, allowing either 1P versus 2P or 1P versus computer. I've already talked about the two-player mode, and it's the same here. However, we have 1P versus computer from the later arcade sequels. In 1P versus computer, you go against varied enemies. It's like the one-player versus two-player, but with computers. They can be surprisingly tough and are actually fun to play against. One thing that is obvious is the worst graphics. I still find charm in these graphics, and like the arcade version, there's only a few music in-game, but unlike the arcade version, there's only one per game mode, which is baffling. I mean, sure, you could argue that the arcade two-player had only one song, but to that I say, it also played in the single-player mode. Next and last game mode is Challenge Record. It's basically just endless mode. So in conclusion, do I think this version is better? No, not really. They have the same positives and negatives, but the SNES does have more, so the choice is yours. So join me next time as we take a closer look at its sequel. Bayumpa, welcome back. Puzzle Bobble 2 is the sequel to Puzzle Bobble 1, released in 1995. But good old America didn't release it in its normal state. So what did it look like? For the sake of my sanity, we'll not be covering that version. Don't mind me, I'm just gonna... Wait! What? What does the American box art look like for the PS1 port? Nope, nope, nope. I'm not dealing with this. Nope. Nope. I'm out. We're going to be covering the original 2X and the Game Boy version. There's a story this time. And what's that story, you might ask? This time, Monster is taxed to stealing the stars from the night sky by the order of Drunk. So you got to stop him. You just don't play these games for the stories, that's for sure. Just like the previous game, there are several modes. First of all, we're gonna start with player versus CPU. It's like the versus mode from the SNES version. The CPUs can get really tough, like so hard you can't beat the game in one sitting. But unlike the SNES version of the first game, you face a more varied and charming cast of characters. I tried all difficulty. Help me! Next mode is in form of the entire first game. This time, however, you got a branching path, and it's shorter. This mode is a lot more fun than the first game and the puzzle mode and the SNES version combined. The one weird thing about this mode is that the ending shows Bob becoming king for some reason. So you really can become king that easily, huh? Aw man, prison stunk. Oh, anyway, I saved the best for last. Player versus player. It's even more fun and chaotic than the first game. Although you get another round on top of the existing 2 back in the first game. Overall, Puzzle Bobble 2 is the best sequel ever. What if I told you they released a holiday themed version a year later? It's exactly what you think it is. A holiday themed version with new levels. Essentially a precursor to a DLC. If you liked Puzzle Bobble 2 and wanted more of Puzzle Bobble 2, then this version is worth checking out. But what about the Game Boy version? Well, for starters, the puzzle mode is just the first game's but shorter. It looks worse and has power-ups from the console ports. The only one I could get is the bowling ball, just once though. Oh, and there's very little music, which is a shame. They're not bad renditions, but because there aren't any original and more music, it has the same problem as the first game. It was disappointing, like that one annoying friend nerd of yours who comes to your house on weekends, only to tie you to the bed and break your legs. Well, the cutscenes before each match is gone, so that's a bummer. And the problem this part has is the fact that you can't differentiate the bubbles. Might say, but it was made for the gameplay, but the way they did it wasn't enough. But the most insulting thing is the fact that this is the easiest version of puzzle mode. So easy it makes the entire mode boring. Why is this part so terrible? See you in part 3 for the black sheep of the series, graphics wise at least. No, I'm not coming back. Go away. Bayumpa, welcome back. Unless you haven't seen part 1 and 2, then make like a tree and get out of here to see them.
It's leave, you idiot. Make like a tree and leave. You sound like a damn fool when you say it wrong.
Jeez, Biff, you didn't have to hit so hard. Yeesh. Oh, and I'm animated now. Yay. We're going to be looking at the Game Boy and arcade version. So let's...
Don't you think you're forgetting something?
Damn it, Drunk, what is it?
The version of Puzzle Bobble 3 you're playing comes from a parallel universe where it stinks, and you're stuck with it forever.
Well, unless you beat it, but my point still stands. You son of a...
Straight.
Released 1 year after the second one in September 1996 and later ported to the Sega Saturn, PlayStation, Game Boy, Nintendo 64, and Microsoft Windows. I read it on the internet, so it must be true. I'm guessing this game was released around Taito's anniversary because plenty of characters from Taito's other games appear as well. Most of them I don't recognize. And there's no story, so when they heard that I liked the story, they must have went,
Like that's ever gonna happen.
The game completely abandons the idea of previous titles that the playfield is being pushed down and instead attaches groups of bubbles to nuts that move downwards. I feel mixed about this system. On the one hand, it avoids the super duper ultimate mega and curse of doom. On the other hand, it eliminates the tension of having the bubbles crush you. Okay, how has it taken me so long for me without mentioning the graphics? They look alright. Reminds me of Melee and Brawl making the cartoony characters not look out of place. But I can't, man. It's just... In the puzzle mode, there's now a couple of vertical scrolling. And they're the bane of my existence.
Oh, save me, Jeebus!
I wanna say this mode is even better than 2, but it's also worse than 2. What about the versus mode? It's pretty good. Didn't expect that, did you? I like how its character stages are represented by the original games. That's
Neat!
And the stages themselves are pretty fun, even more addictive than. And finally, we have versus mode. It takes what worked in Puzzle Bobble 2, takes adventures of 3's new features, and combines both into a masterpiece. So overall, what's my final verdict on the arcade version? Well, it used to be my favorite, but only because I was a dum-dum. Now, looking back, it's a lot like Bencher 2. Sure, they both have improvements and better graphics, but for every step they take forward, they go 10 million steps backwards. But what about the Game Boy version? It's bad is what I would say if this version wasn't that bad. I mean, the graphics are better, the controls are nice, puzzle mode is actually functions, and the color problem from the Game Boy Color sequel was fixed. The ending is a congratulations screen.
No.
Challenge mode is a blast, but what about the 1P versus CPU mode? It's even better than the Game Boy version of Puzzle Bobble 2. The enemies actually give you a challenge, yes! And it's foreshadowing the whiteness of 4. The Game Boy version is a fun time that's better than both the arcade version of 3 and the Game Boy version of 2 combined. Next time on Puzzle Bobble Retrospective, we'll be taking a look at the final arcade game, Puzzle Bobble 4. I know there's Super Puzzle Bobble, but I couldn't get that one to work.
I'll take your entire stock!
So it has finally come to this, me reviewing the 4th and final arcade game. Yes, I know it's not the final one, there's still Super Puzzle Bobble, but I can't get that one to work. But the final for this retrospective of arcade games, Puzzle Bobble 4. So is it good? Is it the best out of all of them? Or is my favorite gonna still be Puzzle Bobble 2? Well, Puzzle Bobble 2 is still my favorite, but you don't care about that. Hey, did you see the Dreamcast cover for Puzzle Bobble 4? No, why would I want to? Oh God! No! No, I can't do this. I can't look at anymore. I'm leaving. No. Can someone explain me how making Bob more realistic, makes it more American friendly. The arcade version was released worldwide in December 1997. For the PlayStation version, in Japan it was released on August 6, 1998, in North America, August 1998, in Europe, April 15, 1999. For the Game Boy Color port, in North America it was released June 1999, and in Japan it was released April 28, 2000. I guess Europe realized that they weren't really missing much. For Windows port, it was released in North America on January 31, 2000. And for the Dreamcast port, in Japan it was released March 16, 2000. And in North America, May 31, 2000. And in Europe, June 9, 2000. Notable mention being this is the second game in the arcade lineup where you can choose different characters. The first being Puzzle Bobble 3. The playable characters are Bob, Alkane, Marino, Kuro, Tam, Cleon, Gigant, Davilon, Bram, and G. Just G. The unlockable characters are Monster, Willen, Paki, Maita, Dreg, and Madame Luna. What are these names? No, really, what are these names? It's like naming your child or Miss City Aspis. But what's the story, you may ask? Well, depending on the character you have chosen, in my case obviously being Bob. On the planet Bobble Luna lives the twins Bob and Bob. One day, the sun fails to rise because the fairy of the night, Cleon, has stolen the light source known as the rainbow for full moon Madame Luna. She splits the rainbow into 7 light bubbles. Bob then set off to retrieve these bubbles and restore the light and peace to that planet. Not before having a sibling fight, because why not? This is the only time I'll be mentioning the PlayStation version. But in those versions, the cutscenes have the characters actually express their emotions instead of just having one blank emotion like in the arcade. And the interactions between some of the characters can really be hilarious. There's this video I put in the link that shows a comparison between their English and their Japanese dialogues. There's not much difference, but the video is still enjoyable, so I recommend checking it out after this. The gameplay is like a more faster and more chaotic version of Puzzle Bobble 2, which I really dig. The only difference is that if you do a chain reaction of dropping bubbles, you can add lots more trash bubbles on the opponent's side, making it surprisingly a lot more fun than Puzzle Bobble 2. Yeah, surprising. Puzzle mode is the exact same as the Game Boy version of Puzzle Bobble 3, surprisingly. It even has the pulley string. And finally, with this version, the multiplayer. It is extreme chaos and it is extremely fun. I recommend playing it with a friend. There are other modes in the PlayStation version, but as far as I'm aware, they're not in the arcade version, so I can't really talk about them. So in conclusion, what do I think of this version? Well, surprisingly, this time around, we're in a scenario where the console version is the way to go. You see, the arcade version isn't that bad, but with the added content of the console ports, you'd better be off with that version. Also lots of enhancements. But now, the Game Boy. So you're wondering, what would Puzzle Bobble 4, a game that looks gorgeous on consoles and arcades, what would it look like on Game Boy Color? Well, it looks like this. Well, how's this version, you might ask? It might even... I'm sorry. I just can't say it. It might even... It might even... It might even top Puzzle Bobble 3 on Game Boy in terms of how good it is. But unfortunately, it doesn't. The graphics I can forgive just a little bit, but not much. But what I can't forgive is the fact that the controls are back to being as sluggish as Puzzle Bobble 2 on Game Boy. Even worse than that, it doesn't control well. The modes are practically the same as the arcade version, so I won't spend too much time on that. However, I can say that every mode is worse than the arcade version. All the fun has been sucked out, and it's overall not that good of a port. But yikes, that graphic. But that's it. That's the last game of the arcade era I can cover. So join me next time for...
元気な子って大好きよ。